Welcome to This is Real Life with Jen Blossom, where we talk all things that make us most uncomfortable. From abuse to addiction and trauma to recovery, nothing is off limits. My guests and I will expose the parts of ourselves that hold the most pain and share the freedom that is possible. This is real life.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to EduMe, the podcast that is focusing on engaging, educating, and empowering parents. You know, we all have amazing stories to tell, and hopefully some of them are positive, but they're not all positive. But there's a lot that we learn from those stories in our lives that are not positive. And I know that as we're going through the days of this quarantine, that we are finding days that are good and bad. Well, that's our life as well. So, I happened to run across this amazing lady in Southern California. Jen Blossom is coming into our studio today to discuss her life. But what's really amazing to me about her life is the fact that we have very similar backgrounds in our education. So we started talking a few weeks ago, and we were talking about each other's backgrounds and life stories and et cetera, et cetera. And it turns out that she too has a bachelor's in psychology, like I do, and she has a master's in special education, like I do, which is rare to find in anyone else. And Jen is the first person in my years that I've come across with the same interest and passion. But those interests and passions derive from some place. So, Jen, welcome to our podcast.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here. I love this.
Oh, I am thrilled. And I forgot to say that I'm Punam with EduMe.
Oh. Yes, you are.
Completely forgot that part. But
Well, okay.
when we were talking in our initial conversation, you and I have so many similarities in our professional careers, but our childhoods were different, obviously, because I was raised by immigrant parents. But we still ended up in the same path and passion. So let's talk a little bit about your background.
Yeah. So you know what I think makes us very similar is our need and our fight for justice, like just for what is right. And that can come from, a background being a child of immigrants and having injustice that way. But it also can come from living in an abusive home growing up. And I think that that's kind of where my story is. Again, when you're a child, you don't know what abuse is. You just know that it doesn't feel good. My parents were never physically abusive. There were a handful of times, but it was more emotional abuse. And so, and again, I didn't know that. I didn't realize that until I was so much older, and I had was struggling with depression and anxiety. I just assumed those were just normal. I didn't know, you don't know what you don't know. And I think that's why I got into psychology. Honestly, I was so intrigued with, human behavior, why people behave in a way. And I think that it's because I was trying to figure out my parents, if that makes any sense. And this is obviously all looking back. I think at the time I knew there was something weird with my parents. My father was an alcoholic. He's passed away from the disease, but I guess the confusing part was that he was a youth pastor as well in my early childhood. So that's a little confusing. My mother, she is still alive, but I've been no contact with her for 5 years. She would be diagnosed narcissist borderline personality disorder. So she's not the kindest person to be around. And so anyways, that's just something that I've had to do. She's also an addict, so I've had to do that for my own health. And, stepping into who I am as an adult because of who and what raised me, I think that's what makes us all so super unique. So I think that that's why I went into special education, because man, talk about injustice, right? Talk about fighting for those who don't have the voice. Even when they're, a lot of parents of kids with special needs, they assume they're fighting for the rights of their child when really they're fighting for their own rights, not always what's best for the kid. And so, yeah, I think that that's kind of where I got my excitement from. I taught special ed high school. So I taught 9 through 12 for 5 years. Before that, I was kind of all over the place. I did early elementary intervention, behavior intervention with those who were diagnosed early with autism. And so I've kind of been all over the place. And, I think the word compassion is something that can transcend all ages. And that is something that I didn't receive as a child. So I think that that's why that's a main part of who I am and why I got into, what I got into. Currently, though, I'm a stay-at-home mom. So, all that schooling that I did and trying to, get all these different certifications and this and that, and then you get pregnant and you're like, oh, I'm Superwoman, I can do it all. And then you have 2 kids and you're like, I don't know what's happening. So anyways, that's kind of what I'm doing right now. But education is my passion. I love, oh my goodness gracious. This is
Totally fine.
See, this is real life with Jen Blossom, right?
I'm going to let it go.
Yeah. Oh, goodness. Oh, yeah, that's what happens. So I have 2 dogs.
On top of children?
I have 2 dogs, and I've got 2 kids. I've got a 5-year-old little boy and a 9-year-old little girl, and a husband who, who's also kind of a child. So that's how many kids I have.
It's funny that you say that, because my kids who are in their 20s now still want us to have a dog. And it's been a struggle and a discussion for decades at this point. And I refuse. And so when they all went off to college, they said, Mom, now you should get a dog, because it's just going to be you and Dad and you'll be lonely. I'm like, listen, I have the 4 of you independent and ready to conquer the world. But I'm still working on your dad. I mean, like, he's getting there, because I have 5 children and I certainly don't need another.
You know what? We got these dogs when we were first married. And so, then you have kids, it's like compounding. Anywho, they are what they are. I think the trash truck came by, and that's very exciting during these quarantine days. So the dogs got excited.
Well, it's an exciting thing to see the trash truck come through. I mean, it used to excite me as a child.
Around here lately, I know. So anyway, so that's kind of how I got into special education and why I am a huge. I like to help coach people in their trauma recovery. A lot of us who've been through trauma don't realize it's called trauma. And how it affects our brain. And so, yeah, you and I were kind of chit-chatting about how education looks for those kids who, are underprivileged or are underparented or are abused as children, and how that kind of affects, education.
So as you share your story, one of the biggest questions that I have for you is that you have been able to dig yourself out of the hole, if you will, that you were in, even if you didn't realize it, that these paths that you've chosen were really for self-care and developing resilience. And what advice do you give to other parents who have been through a situation that you've been in or a similar situation where they have felt not as strong and what is the word I am looking for?
Resilient.
Resilient.
Yeah, so I don't know. There are so many things I think that played a part, but honestly, it was me. I think what I realized, like I know what I don't want to be. And I'm going to work my butt off and make sure that I am everything that I want to be. Um, I know there are so many stories of people who come from abusive backgrounds, and you get to choose. You choose. Do you want to go? You literally hit a T in the road, and it's like, all right, Jen, you're going to go left and be just like them, or you're going to go right and be exactly the opposite of. And so I decided the road less traveled. I don't think it was easy. It was very hard. It's still very hard. I don't think that it gives me an excuse to be a bad parent. I don't think that it gives me an excuse to behave in a certain way. I think that it's provided me a path to build resilience. And so I think it's all about how you look at it, really. Was it hard? Yeah. Do I wish it was different? Yeah. But what am I going to do about it? It's not about waiting for the storm to pass. It's about learning how to dance in the rain, right? It's about a perspective change. And has it been difficult? Oh my gosh. Have my being a parent myself really triggered lots of pain in my early childhood? Absolutely. Being married, has that been hard? Absolutely. But you know what? Like, I've just chosen to do it differently. And if there was something that I could tell a parent, so I mean, there's so many different ways we can go with this, but if you're a parent listening to this, and you're like, yeah, my this was my life and this was this and this, all I can say to you is that your children are not meant to have to carry the burden or the weight of your trauma. So that's your job and your stuff that you need to go get figured out. Um, it shouldn't be anything that they have to worry about. They've got enough worries of their own. And you know what? I mean, I truly believe hurt people hurt people. And so my parents were also hurt. They came from painful pasts. And so was that an excuse for their behavior? No, absolutely not. They became adults and they had choices. So, yeah, I mean, I would highly suggest that you get into therapy, not any kind of therapy, get into trauma therapy, someone who knows what trauma does to the brain and how you can actually recover. I mean, that's the best part, is you can learn new things. And we know the brain is always changing with neuroplasticity. It's awesome that we're not stuck being who we thought we have to be. So yeah, I mean, I think that that's kind of how I built. I decided no. I just decided I wasn't going to do that, and I wasn't going to be that. And I believe that there were bigger things for me in this life, that I wasn't meant to be and live a continuation of their abuse and their trauma. If that makes any sense.
No, it makes perfect sense. And I think so many times we get bogged down in our own issues and we forget that we are in control of our issues. They may be imposed on us, but our reaction to them is ours.
Yeah,
And so
absolutely.
when you got married and you had your two children, parenting changed for you. How
Yeah.
did you how did you make that change? And if you don't mind giving us an example or two of
Yeah.
some things that you experienced that you feel like you're doing better for your kids.
Oh my gosh. Well,
Because
everything
your
that you
parents, I'm assuming, felt like they were doing good for you. Right.
Yeah, that's an interesting thing. I don't know. They had an intelligence, so they knew right from wrong, and they behaved differently behind closed doors. Therefore, that makes me believe that they knew that
Mm.
their behavior was wrong. But I can tell you this. I can tell you that being a parent is very different than being a teacher at school. And I think that that's where I had to make a choice, because I love teaching. I loved my kids, but I could not be the best teacher and the best mom at the same time. And so I had to make a choice, and I will choose it again. I will always choose to be at home with my kids. Um, is it less thankful, or is it a thankless job? Absolutely. There's no awards, but you know what? Actually, as a special education teacher, there's not very many awards either. So, um, but again, I mean, it's about nurturing your child. That's your job, is to nurture them and teach them. I mean, I personally believe that social, emotional, like all of those things you can't even get to academia until you do that first, right? Like in Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? Like you have to make sure the basics are set. You really need to provide a safe, nurturing environment where kids are okay. It's okay for them to fail. You need to do all of those things at home in order for them to have and be the best they can be in terms of education. And so that's kind of what I do. I'd love to, that's my goal. I let the teachers do the teaching, and I be the parent, right? So that means if I get angry, which I do, man, right? Like helping, it's all this, homeschooling right now. I mean, how do you not understand area and perimeter? Yesterday with my daughter, I'm like, what do you not get? You count the dots. So sometimes that means I have to go, all right, Jen, chill out, right? Like I need to take a break. It's not her, it's me. I need to hey, I'll be right back. And then you know what I always do? I apologize. Hey, I'm really sorry I got frustrated. You didn't deserve that. I mean, honesty is the best, because not only does she deserve the apology for my frustration, but it teaches her then to also apologize for when she's frustrated. I think it's really important for us to take time for ourselves. I think that reflection only happens in the quiet of our hearts. And I think that, reading books and, self-care. Self-care is not selfish. That was something that I was taught growing up. And it's so the opposite. I become my best self when I practice self-care. You know, Growing up, we didn't really get hugged. Well, no, we didn't actually. We never got hugged or kissed or told, I love you. And so I am so all about that. I want my kids to know that no matter what happens, no matter the grades they get, the mistakes they make, I love them. They know that. And I make it a point. I want them to learn from me, um, how to love and how to forgive and how to behave. I also think it's important to be consistent, and supportive. That is so confusing for children when one minute, one day you're allowed to do this and the next day you're not. I mean, you need to be really consistent with what you're allowing and behavior that is okay or not okay, because it's so confusing in the mind of a child because they are not really in control. And when they can't determine or when they can't figure out the response they're going to get from you, it causes a lot of anxiety. So being consistent is really important. And I just tell them how proud I am of them. All of those things, because you can't make someone more intellectual, right? You're born with IQ. It's not something that you're, buying at the grocery store. But I would say that love and compassion is more important than all of the, algebraic equations, I
Even
hope
if your
all.
daughter does not learn the area of something, correct, of a square or
Yeah,
perimeter.
exactly. Right, exactly. Right now in my house, I mean, what we're teaching right now, okay, so the teachers are sending work, whatever, but what I'm teaching time management. I'm teaching her that she needs to figure out how to plan her day accordingly. I'm teaching her to be a self-starter. I'm not hanging over her shoulder looking at everything that she does. I am showing her that I trust her, that she's going to get her work done. All of these things are just as important as what she's actually reading or learning, right? So if I can do that on my part, then the teacher can do their part. But it really is, a team effort. And I think that a lot of times parents forget that in the classroom too.
It's such an important point that you make. And the whole premise of EduMe is to be a partner, that parents should be a partner in their child's education. But part of being a partner is providing those skills that will enable them to be successful in school.
Yeah.
And so by you providing the independence of having a schedule, learning how to follow it, checking it off, going to the next thing,
Yeah.
trying to create a work like environment, because when they get out into the real world, regardless of what kind of job they're going to hold, hopefully they'll have some kind of job, but they will have the base knowledge and skills to be a good time manager. And
Oh
time
my gosh.
management is
Such a big
so
deal.
crucial right now with all of the technology and, different avenues that we are being, for lack of a better word, attacked from, that, they need to figure out how to handle all these multi technological issues
Yeah. The
or
other thing,
parameters.
yeah, no, totally. And I think that being a partner, I mean, that is, you know, it has to be a partner relationship with your child's teacher. It cannot be just the teacher teaches and you back off and don't show up. Like you as a parent have to show up. Um, you as a parent don't do the teacher part, like that's her part, but you need to be the encourager, the tutor, whatever it is that needs to happen. Like that's your job as the parent. Like don't have kids if you don't want to parent. Um, but another thing I wanted to talk about is how important it is to teach our kids to advocate for themselves, no matter if
Mm-hmm.
you're a child of special need and have special needs, or if you are just in general. Like if my daughter doesn't understand something, I tell her, hey, you need to advocate for yourself. And you need to contact the teacher. You need to tell her you don't understand. You need, all of these things. I mean, talk about life lessons that I wouldn't really necessarily be involved in if it weren't for this situation, this pandemic that we're in right now, right? So it's also about perspective, right? Like I'm looking at this like, wow, what a cool opportunity that I can come alongside my daughter during her education while during this pandemic, instead of sending her off to school, having her come home and not knowing really what goes on a daily basis. So advocating is also a really big thing that you can teach your kids. A huge thing I try to teach mine.
And I was told when my oldest, who's now 25, was probably 7, the principal at the school told me that if I did not advocate for my children, that no one else was going to. And it wasn't
100%.
because it wasn't because she didn't care about my children or the
Right?
teachers didn't care about the children or the students. It's literally a time issue. There is
Absolutely.
just not enough physical time for each child to get individualized attention. And
That's
the
right.
other part of it is that we parents know our children the best, and we can offer those nuggets into our child's psyche that no one else can, including the child at times. So I believe that you teaching your daughter advocacy and showing her what advocacy looks like is absolutely going to ensure her success.
Yeah. 100%. And not just in education, just in life in general, right? If something isn't fair, I absolutely question it. If you don't understand something, let someone know. I don't want anyone, I never want, see, growing up, I was always very, I didn't trust adults at all. So I would never raise my hand. I mean, that was like the worst thing that could possibly happen. Just to be humiliated, like asking a stupid question or something like that. So I never would. And I don't, that is a part of being, brought up in an abusive family. That's just a part of one of the side effects is you don't ask for help. You don't question things because you have no power to change them. And so, yeah, I mean, it's really important that we teach our kids that they have a voice and to use it respectfully, right? I mean, I'm not saying you can throw a fit, but just to advocate for yourself without having to fear humiliation or rejection.
And we do tell our children that it's all in how you present it.
Mm.
The advocacy can be in a bully form where you just railroad yourself in, or you
Mm-hmm.
can go in and question why it was done a certain way and you get a better response. And more
Yeah.
likely, there can be dialogue to make it easier for the next person who encounters that situation.
Well, and I think that that's modeled, right? I mean, I really
Mhm.
honestly believe that your kids see, I mean, listen, you pick up more unintentional stuff than you do sitting in the classroom intentionally, right? So you're going to learn, your kids are going to learn how to advocate for themselves by watching you. So if you're a bully and that's the way you get things done, that's exactly how they're going to assume things get done. So it's very important that you model how they should behave when they feel things are unjust or they don't understand something or that being, that kind of stuff.
Right. Okay, so I ask most of my guests this, and I
Mhm.
have not told you that I was going to ask you this, but I'm going to ask you anyway.
Let's do it.
Let's go for it. What is the one piece of advice that you would give parents right now in the situation we're in to manage everything they're dealing with between work, home, children, and schooling from home?
Mm. Okay, I would use one word, and it's called grace. That
Mm.
you need to give yourself grace, your kids grace, your job grace. We are all trying. And I say we all. Some people aren't, but if you're listening to this podcast, you probably are one of the ones trying. So if that's you, give yourself some grace. At the end of this, your kids are not going to remember that they were studying perimeter and area. What they're going to remember is that their mom smiled at them, that their mom took time for herself, that their dad help make dinner, that they did family movies, right? I mean, the kids are going to remember experiences, not so much topics. So I would give your kids grace. My 5-year-old, he doesn't get it, right? Like he just knows that he can't play with his buds. And when you're 5, that's how that's your emotional socialization. Like this is how you get fed emotionally, is playing with your friends. And my 9-year-old, it's different. She can FaceTime her friends or Facebook Messenger her friends or whatever, but he can't. And so I see him acting out differently. He's a very chill kid, super fun, easygoing, but he is so dang emotional lately. And I think to myself, I'm going to give him some grace right now. We are under a lot of pressure. He is going through his own thing that he doesn't know how to verbalize. For goodness sake, he doesn't know. So I'm going to give him some grace. I mean, I'm still going to expect good behavior and we're still going to talk about it. But yeah, I think the word would be grace. Grace for your husband, grace for your wife, grace for your family, grace for, you know, for everybody really, because we're all going through craziness. Yeah, but just to try to create an experience of it all, a positive experience of it all. And if that means you don't get your math homework done, that means you don't get your math homework done. That's kind of where I'm at. So, yeah, I mean, I think that would be my advice and not just during this pandemic, but just in general. I mean, I think that we're so hard on ourselves. Again, those of us who are trying and listening to podcasts and reading books and stuff, those of us we are trying. And so I think that offering yourself and everyone around you grace always is a good idea.
It's interesting that you say that because grace is something that we don't often, as parents, allow ourselves to
Mm,
have because we have so many balls that we're juggling every single day. So that is
hmm
incredible advice and a great reminder that, yes, we are overwhelmed and overworked, and we've got things not going at 100%, even when things are whatever, quote unquote, normal, they're not at 100%. But allowing ourselves to realize that we're the best we can be for that moment and that day, I think that's sage advice there, Jen.
Oh,
I
thank
am
you.
going to.
Okay, you know what? At 29 minutes, you
Mhm.
started cutting out a little bit. So let's just start
Ah,
over and you
what
say
was I saying at
kind of
29
again what you were
minutes?
just saying. I can cut this. Yeah, I
Uh,
can. I can cut that part out. So
okay, so
I was talking
you
about
just.
grace, and you were saying that that was good advice.
Okay, now you're cutting out on me. I lost you.
Ay, ay, ay.
Okay, there you are.
All right, go ahead. See if that works.
Okay. Okay. So, we don't often give ourselves grace as parents because we have so many different balls that we're juggling at any given time in a quote unquote normal situation. And you throw in a pandemic, everyone's under one roof, you know, we're feeling a lot more pressure because everything's happening in one single area. So allowing yourself some grace is huge. And so I'm so glad that you shared that because I think I needed to hear that.
Hmm.
I need to allow myself grace as well. And I know many of my
Yeah.
friends do in this time because we're all just in survival mode, honestly.
You know, it's so funny though, because even in my real life, I'm still I feel like I'm in survival mode. Right? Like, it's just a different with the pandemic, it's a different type of hard, right? Like, before the hard was, "Oh, I've gotta run to soccer practice, and then I gotta go pick up, so and so, and then I gotta drop this off, and then I gotta do carpool, and then I gotta get home and make dinner, and I gotta go to the grocery store." So it's a different type of hard. And so I think we can learn a lot from it. Like, hey, like, if the kids have chicken nuggets 3 nights in a row, it's gonna be okay, you know? "Oh, we didn't eat all our fruits and veggies. It's okay." Just those sorts of things, not creating anxiety. Because here's the issue: when you become overwhelmed, what are you breathing onto your children? You're breathing over being overwhelmed on them. And so it's so important that you are able to calm yourself down and allow yourself to feel the grace, because it inadvertently allows your children to feel grace.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Such sage advice. I'm so glad you shared.
Oh, I'm
I
so
feel like we
happy. I
should
love
be in
this
a,
stuff. This is like
I
my
think,
favorite thing.
I think we should be in a yoga class and doing some, asanas or something. I don't know.
Honestly, I enjoy I love teaching. So what better to use your life, learn from it, and then teach from it, right?
We all have something that we have had to learn from and that we
Mhm.
can teach to others. And I think we forget that sometimes because we
Mm.
get caught up in our daily routine. There's
Yeah.
so much to offer in okay, then we'll just edit that out. That's it. Okay.
Well, I was just going to say that honestly, I think that real life experience is much more powerful than something that you can learn from a book. And so, if you can even share your real life experiences with your children, I mean, obviously, age appropriate truth is always the best policy here. Um, but that right there, what a cool thing. Hey, talking to your kids at dinner. "I'm sorry, you guys. I am feeling so tired tonight. I'm just having a rough time with trying to work." I mean, honesty is the best policy. And to use that to kind of open up some verbal communication with your kids is also really, it's a cool experience right now. I mean, again, it's not easy, it's hard, but it's definitely something that we can learn from. And yeah, I'm trying my best. We're doing creative things, like we're doing every Saturday night we dress up for dinner. So it's like a dinner night, and we do Pictionary or something, right? So I'm trying to create fun things that the kids will remember. Um, and again, and social emotional health is always on the top of my list.
Absolutely. We actually played Wii Sports last night. I don't think I played it in probably 10 years,
So
but
fun.
but it's fun to go back to those
Yeah,
retro games too. I don't know if Wii
totally.
is really retro, but you get the
Yeah, no,
point.
totally. Or I mean, right. So again, I mean, I think it's about experiences and it's about right now, I mean, right now being a parent and if you're working from home and you're trying to make sure your kids are doing their work and you're overwhelmed and that's the time to offer yourself some grace. If you've got some free time because, you're not working or whatever, then that's the time that you create these little experiences for your kids. But
Absolutely.
yeah. So,
So,
anyways, yeah, I mean, I'm so happy that I was able to come on your podcast and share a part of my background and why I am such a proponent of education of all things. You can't do better unless you can't do better unless you know better, and you can't know better unless you learn better. So,
I
um,
love it. I love it. I
yeah,
love
so
it.
yeah, so my
So,
podcast is This is Real Life with Jen Blossom, and it started because again, I just think that experiential learning is the best kind of learning, and I think that just because you're a parent doesn't mean you're a good one. So I think that a lot of people that they have great stories that we can all kind of learn from, and so I started a podcast where I interview people who've been through addiction, who've been through all types of abuse, who've been to and from the worst of things. And yeah, so I mean, if you're at a place in your life where you're looking for a little bit of encouragement or some hope in a really hard situation or just community of people that have been through the same sorts of things, I definitely would check it out. It's on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, all those different platforms. But it's been a pleasure being on your show, and I just
thank
appreciate what you're doing, creating community and partnerships between schools and parents.
well, thank you, Jen, and I'm so glad you came on. And I'm so excited that we are getting to collaborate together because you putting these stories you putting these stories out about real life issues that we all face in one form or another and bringing them to light and bringing a solution, because so many times people just want to know that I've been through this and I can have a positive outcome. So I'm
Hmm.
so glad that you're sharing
Hmm.
not only your story but others' stories. So
Yeah.
thank you so
Oh
much for
my gosh.
joining me.
It is my pleasure. It is my
And
pleasure. I'm so grateful that we got to connect.
yes. So, guys, if you want to listen to Jen's podcast, it is This is Real Life. You can find it anywhere you listen to your podcasts. We will have that in our show notes on the website. And always remember that we are working together to educate them better. Stay
Mhm.
safe, my friends. Take care. Bye.
Bye.